Good afternoon. We're going to call to order the February 27th meeting of the Fairport Industrial Development Agency. First of all, we have public comment. Is there any? I don't see anyone. I don't hear anyone. So we'll pass that on and go to old business. And our matter of old business relates to our branding update. And we have the folks from Black Dog here with us to talk about it. So please go ahead.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, let's do it up.
So thank you all for having us out here. Made a lot of really good progress. I know the board's looked at a few different variations. We went through a whole logo process.
Oh, just to remind everyone, we've got Chris Coughlin. He's been our contact on Zoom quite a bit with Leslie and I, and
Jesse Tyree.
Yep. And we thank them for joining us this evening.
Thank you. So yeah, so we've gone through quite a few rounds of revisions from initial concepts, abandoning some, trying new, tweaking others. And it seems like we've really gotten to the point where we've landed on, call it 3 logos. Within one of them, there's a version or two, with different colors, a few different layouts. But realistically, it's a very similar concept there. And I think we're really at the point now where we're able to make some decisions and really start to finalize what that actual logo will be, and then really move forward into the marketing assets, the actual web design, and all the other deliverables in the project. So I will pull up this packet, which I believe, Martha, you distributed Friday, was it?
Right, with the board packet.
And we'll just kind of give a recap here. And if obviously there's notes, comments, questions, just, feel free to interrupt us or, provide your insight. So this concept here, this is based off an original logo from 4 or 5 rounds ago. We really tried to use a pretty bold, strong, yet elegant and timeless font here, as well as the use of that deep blue, which really helps to communicate that as well. When we originally started, the arc, which you can see in the E, was sort of its own element. It was a little too out there in front, and we didn't want to do something where it became overused. So this concept here really takes it to a minimal abstract degree where it's just crossing through the E. There's a few different colors here. So for example, the URA could have the light blue. When you go to the IDA page, that light blue switches over to the yellow. The same thing could happen on letterhead. Just sort of trying to give each agency its own unique color and some differentiation there. And this is just an example of how some of those look. I know it's a little small on the screen over there from far.
And Chris, I think you arrived at that arc via some of the work you were doing when you were experimenting with the bridge, some of the other icons throughout the logo design process. So what you see here is a combination of the strong typeface, but also that arc has a lot deeper meaning, just in relation to the bridge, the river aspect. And I think that can be a design element that's used across pieces, whether it's to accent copy phrases or whether it's used in as a design graphic element. It seems simple, but that's also a good thing when we do this. I think the way that Chris is describing the usage of the color breakdowns and palettes the goal would be to not have every single piece look the same, using a core logo color set for whenever this is printed. But if we wanted to create things like strictly for the LDC, we're using this orangey, yellow, whatever it may be. So if there were a bunch of sheets stacked up or something like that, you can clearly distinguish them. It doesn't need to overly, complex the project, but having this versatility will help us later.
We have some, actually first here, we have the use of an icon with this. So again, when we're trying to think of the different marketing assets, placement on the website, could be a brochure that describes each agency. We wanted to really start to flesh those out. So this is how an icon could be used with one of them. And later on in this packet, there's a few different examples of icons, as I know we didn't fully land on one yet. But this would probably primarily be used in a larger placement when it's with the logo like this. We wouldn't want to put it in the corner of the website on each page. It'd be very small, wouldn't really reproduce as well.
So maybe on a banner.
Yes, yep, something large scale. And then we started to mock some of these up, and we actually have some print business cards. We just printed those out the other day to show it on a print piece and not just a screen, as well as, if we just embroidered it on a polo or a shirt that's worn to more professional events. Scroll.
Just zoom out a little bit.
Oh, there we go. And then we have option 2, which to me really is option 1, just showing it in a different color scheme here. So really the same thing, except rather than alternating the colors using this bronze look, the bronze originated because we're like, what's the color of the bridge? We obviously want it to look, really nice on paper. For example, a printed piece, if you had it to look maybe foil, so it's a little, shining there. But really all the same qualities of option 1, just going with one solid color as opposed to alternating the colors for each agency.
So it's 1 and 1A, essentially.
Yes. Yep. And then again, just showing another agency variation for something that's large format that has the icon attached to it. The business card, again, as well as the polo mock-up. And again, if you want it on the business card or letterhead, that art could be a foil look, so it stands out a little bit, provides sort of an elevated, high quality look to it.
Is it flat or is it
Right, I don't think it would be
embossed,
raised.
not raised,
But yeah, you
but
can do
flat?
something like a foil, or there's a printing process called aquafoil, which is pretty inexpensive. And what it does is it'll print that bronze and then overlay a clear finish, which makes it look almost metallic.
Great.
But also, to your point of having it raised, that's another printing option that can be done.
Sure.
Things like business cards.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then this option, again, pretty much the same option. I know we had a lot of blue being used, so we wanted to try out another version with this deep green. Again, it has that bronze look to it. It's a little hard to tell there, but actually on this screen, you can see that bronze look has a little foil look to it. I don't think you can quite see it as well on that. And again, showing an icon variation with it. Business card mock-up. I don't know if you can tell the little bit of a foily look to it on the big screen there. But that's just another example of that.
One thing I wanted to sort of, you can keep scrolling if you want. I mean, they're pretty consistent. One thing I wanted to mention too, that is if you look at the artwork on the water bottles in front of you, it seems to be pretty consistent, right? But the changes that have been made here are the typography used is a serif typeface. So serif typeface is meaning they have these little pieces on them, these little feet, like on the E or the C. That's contrasted from the typeface that you have here, which is more of a sans serif typeface, and it's much more, rounded. It's meant to be much more readable. This projects strength as like Times New Roman font, the way they built Roman columns in architecture, where this sans serif typeface doesn't necessarily do that. If you also look at like this little arc that you have underlining, the current artwork on the water bottle, it's almost if we took that artwork and we sort of kept these things consistent with your existing brand by pushing that arc into the artwork, but not necessarily making it overwhelming. So there should be a benefit of having something that looks consistent, that's updated to a certain degree, and then it gives us this design element of this sort of like stroke that runs through it to be able to use things later.
Great.
And then this option 4 is where we start to introduce some different elements. Again, it still uses the same OSED font. We have the 3 arrows on the left that originally were vertical, meant to symbolize, an arrow moving forward. We turned it on the side. The top and bottom of the 3 lines also, you could turn those and really, again, mimics the bridge element there. We did have a version right before this one, I believe, where there was not the bridge accent through the E. So I think that's probably still in play in my mind when I compare that in this version. Because again, it's a very subtle change. That's really the only thing there. And again, this uses the blue from before and that bronze look.
Right, and the difference here is we have a logo that goes with that font. And so we have to decide, do we want a logo, I think.
Yep. So like the first three, we would consider just like a typeface logo. This is more of the traditional icon and then the type next to it. Just a different style, kind of all based on preference.
Yeah, the arc in the E has more like square cuts at, like somebody cut off the ends of them, where the other versions had it tapered off, looking a little bit more like a thumbnail.
Mhm. I think we wanted to see that. We all kind of key in on the arc and that was early on, and I think that was your graphic designer, Lauren.
Yep.
We keyed in on that very early. So we wanted to just see what would it look. We didn't want to lose that necessarily if we went with the logo, but seeing it in person is important.
Okay. Especially printed, like on the samples.
Yes.
And then again, this is an example of an icon. At the end, we have some IDA icons, as that was the one that was not really hitting at first. For a larger placement again. A business card that shows this. How to zoom on this?
Control plus.
That's big enough to see. Really, it's the same pieces we have over there on the table.
And now for something completely different. Nope.
Oh, there we go. And then, so this is a completely different concept. Originally, with those arced lines on the left, I think there were 4 and 4. We switched that to be 3 and 3 so that they represent each agency. You can see that there's obviously the navy blue layer, and then there's the 3 different colors. It shows here as well the different variations, how that could change with those 3 different colors, as well as carrying that arc through the E here. And then again, showing an icon that could go with it. A business card, and you can actually see Lauren mock this up a little different in terms of having the name go around in a circle. We would probably view that as being a secondary logo asset, ideal for a placement like a LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook profile photo where you have a small square circle placement. That would be an ideal use of it there. And then we just put together some extra color palettes. I think we've had these in here for a couple different rounds to show obviously how you can have 3 core colors, accent colors that could be used from time to time on different marketing assets, campaign materials. But some of these have been used throughout this packet, just a way to look at them all side by side. And then icons. Originally, I think we have the URA on the left, the LDC in the middle, and originally there was an icon that had some smokestacks in it for IDA, and I was like, well, we don't have any of those here, and we aren't aspiring to have those. So we put up a bunch of different icons here. I know I have I think a heavy favorite of these 5 here in terms of how applicable are they, as well as sort of just fitting in with the others.
And these icons are really just used to represent a style. So this line drawing style of whatever makeup, right? These could be projects you have, grant assistance. What we're trying to do is just lock down what would the illustration style for these elements be, so that once we get the logo approved, we're able to utilize these different things throughout the marketing collateral.
And then we started to define a photography style, as you can see. So obviously there's a very bright use of photos. There's contrast to them. There's people in them. I know early on there was discussion about needing to capture visual assets, and it's a constant process. You have a new project, you have a new event, consistently getting these. So this would be an example of a page that's in the brand guide for someone to reference. If you work with a local photographer, you can say, hey, look at these. This is what we're going for. People, bright, contrast, that sort of style, and give them direction.
And I think these images are meant to represent landmarks, right? The individuals that are making change happen and making things, facilitating, and then also showing people in the process of working. So not just photos of the area, not just photos of things like projects, but to show personality, like this girl smiling, or even this woman smiling in the bottom right as she's doing her job. Those things really will form the tone of voice for the brand.
And then as we were putting together some of those examples that showed, different color variations for each agency, we thought it'd be important to show an actual use of that. So this would be the IDA versus the LDC website page. As you can see, you would click through to a new page. It's really tough to tell, but the arc and the E would change color. The top bar at this, above the navigation, as well as the primary button color, could all match those different different pages. As Jesse mentioned before, if you had a brochure for each agency, it's about us. You could also do that same thing on there. You give somebody the three, they're color coordinated, and they all work together as a brand.
And do you find that do you recommend that, or are you neutral on it, or is it not? Is it an okay thing? What's your professional opinion about, for example, changing those elements as we move through different agencies on a website?
I think that if you are going to be consistent and somebody is going to make sure that those brand guidelines are followed, it shouldn't be a problem. If what happens is if there's a lot of external parties that we're sharing this artwork with, it's going to be very hard to keep them to adhere to your brand standards. So if you are in the driver's seat of the collateral being created, which is part of this scope, and after that you're able to maintain the brand standards, it really shouldn't be an issue, and it should be a tool that's used. However, if you share a lot of it, and some of your colleagues you might share this with are going to change things on their own, that's where it could create some complexities.
Okay. Something to think about.
Inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Because people do, I'm guilty of it, cut and paste.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Stretch it out a little bit,
Vendors
or
are just
Yeah.
whatever. But you will have a full brand deck with brand guidelines at the end of this project. It's just, making sure everybody's following that.
Great.
And next is a letterhead mock-up here next to the business card. So obviously, as you can see, it's pretty simple, but we do have the 3 lines in the background, a little faint on the letterhead here. So just an example of how one of them could look there. And then Lauren also mocked up an ad. So as you can see, she's got a serif typeface going here, as well as it's paired with a sans serif underneath to try to really give that professional look to it. The 3 lines again are in the background here. It's a person featured in the ad to give it some personality. Obviously, this is a digital ad, as it's just a learn more button you would click, as opposed to a QR code or anything in print. Really just trying to show you guys another example of it being used and how the brand could expand from the logo.
And really how you can tie in like these color accents into things like the buttons or other elements later.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was the last page. So yeah, we're really open to your feedback, thoughts, comments. As we mentioned, we've gone through quite a few rounds. We want to stay on pace, and hoping that a decision is made, I guess, in the finite direction of the logo, so we can begin a lot of those other phases. Not that it has to be done right now today, but
Right. I think a soft way to say that is there's a lot to come based off this logo selection. And through the process of working, 10 or 12 variations, it seems to be that a lot of the feedback that was provided up front has been consistently maintained, and that we should really lean into those things that have resonated with you. Once this logo and this one logo that we're going to be using is approved, we'll be able to flesh out the other design pieces. We've taken a little bit of time to sort of work ahead on those so that you can see them, not just different logos on a white background. But in order to maintain our time frame and to keep going, a swift decision on how this stuff is going to roll ahead will really allow us to move all those project cards over and then just keep pushing through the rest of the things. The marketing material is going to be pretty straightforward for us to get through. The next big hurdle for us will be the website content and editing everything so that we can get your feedback, and then our copywriters can copyright it. So in an ideal world, this brand gets approved, brand meaning logo. We're able to push all of these design pieces back to our designers, and then the focus goes over to the web to clear out all of that content, make sure everything is ready to go on the site, and then those 2 things can come together.
Yep. And as he's mentioning about the site, we have been working on a brand messaging and positioning document too, that I would say pretty close to final stages as well, which would go into the brand guide as well. And the goal of that is so that any one of you on the board, anyone at OSED, you could give them that guide. They not only know the visuals, but they know, all right, this is how we try to portray ourselves. This is, the way we like to say things. This is the way we don't like to say things. To really have that guide, so you could pretty much onboard anyone, not only from a visual aspect, but the messaging, what we say, what we do, how we position ourselves. And the other piece is we've also begun to lay out every page of the website in a Google Doc, not with the exact copy, but the different sections, what we want to talk about. And we've gone back and forth with Martha a couple times on that. So with these visuals and getting a logo approved soon, as well as beginning to write that copy, we'll be able to get right into the design of the website.
For the 6/1 finalization date.
That's right.
Right?
6/1, June 1.
6/1.
Yep, we can make it. So
I thought
Leslie,
maybe-
do you want to, you've been on many of the calls. Do you want to start out with some comments and?
Well, I have to say that, each of our meetings have been exciting because every iteration of those logos has improved truly. And initially when we all saw the first round and we were concerned about the heavy reliance on the bridge, it was obviously coming into town, an iconic image that all of us who live here have seen it everywhere. You know what I mean? And we want it to be somewhat different. And you were easy, and with such ease, you moved into just using the arc and the E and illustrating it in other ways, with the three-colored, I don't know what it is, snowflake. That's what I keep thinking of. So that was great. And the ability to take the feedback and turn it into something that got us excited another time was great, because each of those meetings has been a great opportunity for us to see what can be, the future is going to be for our organization, which is great. So thank you, guys.
That's it.
And which one's your favorite?
Wouldn't want you to copy me, but I personally, I definitely like the bronze E. That from day one, I've liked the bronze bridge and the E. I've liked that all along. I like the combo of the sans serif with the serif text. I like this font is bold, which is and strong, whereas this one still picks up a little bit of this look, that I like. So it isn't a drastic change, but a more modernization of who we are, because we have changed dramatically as a board, as an organization, as a community.
Yeah. Amen.
So Leslie, which one is that?
Option 2, I like, when we can talk about all the different colors and the palettes at the end. Those are all appealing to me as well. How about you, Ken? What did you like? I know you're a numbers man, so these colors are not your faves.
I like 4. Because I like the forward looking.
Well,
I know it's bridge, but it looks like an arrow to me.
Mhm.
So I like that. I like 5, but it looks too busy to me. There's too much there. And I don't like, personally, the icon on the end. I like it more plain.
So it's not.
So
No.
I have no objection to 2, but I think I like 4 a little better.
Okay. Actually, I liked what you did with the logo faintly in the letterhead there. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, and then it was in the website. I didn't pick that up on initially.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing it out, but that's kind of an interesting use of it.
Yeah, it
To
could be
carry
used
it
for a lot
through.
of things. Like
Mhm.
even if there was like an animation to something, that arrow could build itself,
Ah.
whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, what do you like?
Just to make it interesting, I was drawn towards 1 and 5. So 1, I like the delineation of colors when we think about the organizations and kind of bright lining.
Yeah.
You're at the URA page right now. You're at the IDA page right now. And I like the subtle changes with the font, the bridge in the E changing color, as well as what you showed us today, which wasn't even on my radar, thinking about the websites and how you could, really kind of envelop the page, or at least highlight in specific areas of the page, helping folks identify I'm in the URA, right, with the color cues.
Why 5?
5, real quick, on one still.
Oh,
With the icons. I did my own search trying to find, I'm disappointed in the universe at this point for the lack of iconography around progress or collaboration. It actually made me yearn for that constellation one. When that was first presented, thinking about the IDA, where it was just, it seemed to be just like an icon bringing things together, right? And I think of the IDA that way. But in doing a further search around collaboration icons, there's not much that really resonated with me. Candidly, the options on that slide, the bar graph with the arrow pointing, the kind of the progress theme, that makes sense to this. We're the only one that kind of resonated with me for our look for an icon. So but I do like the use of those icons with option 1, where appropriate. 5, I've always been drawn to 5 since we started this conversation. I love this visual. And I shared this note in the text message I think I sent to the whole group. Every time I look at that, I see 6 lines. And I was thinking, I wonder what it would look like if we remove just about the icon in the lead. Remove the dark blue and thicken the 3 lines so that it's actually 3 things instead of 6 things represented in that image, representing kind of the trilogy of the organizations that we see in the other icon. I like it as is, but I've been curious about what that would look like since we've seen that image, because it's confused me as someone very close to this organization. Every time I look at it, I see 6 lines.
So you'd remove the dark lines.
I'm interested in kind of seeing what that would look like. I like those 3 lines. If you take the dark blue out, and I'm not married to the color swatch of those 3 colors specifically, but thicken the lines a little bit so it makes the icon a little bit more powerful. Kind of reaching upwards, 3 organizations coming together, but reaching upwards in that kind of pyramid or triangle shape.
Yeah, the negative space like this, almost like the flux capacitor. Of my Back to the Future brain. But if we remove the shapes that are underneath, we're talking about, right? Like the 3 lines.
Exactly. Yeah. Like currently the orange, the green, and the purplish hued lines would be bolder, and they would be the 3 lines at the lead of OSED. Again, just explaining this, what does that mean? What does that icon mean to our organization? Having it be 3 lines that intersect or join, as opposed to the 6 lines currently represented there, seems easier for me to personally explain to someone. But
see, I see the 6 lines being 2 layers. I saw the dark colors being who we are, and the colorful ones, arcs around it, being people we serve who come to us, and we partner in that way.
interesting.
That's how I saw that. Though I much prefer the colors that we've seen, the bronze, the dark green, the other blue versus purple and reddish. Just personally, I think those colors on these palettes look much more strength more than the light purple to me.
Yeah,
I agree. Because it's more elevated, more serious.
That's just me. How about you?
well, what's left?
Well, wait, Donna.
No, number 3 is the only one that's left, I think.
I'm between 1 and 2.
Oh.
I'm between 1 and 2. 3 is the green one, right?
Right.
3 just, I don't know why it says golf to me.
Well, and someone mentioned it looks like Brockport and also Genesee Regional Bank.
Yeah, I see Brockport every time.
5 to me feels too playful and not who we are. but I like the incorporation of the colors in one as a nod to the past logo. And then to me, tying that to I think wanted to communicate that professionalism that we're
Kevin?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Winter Special Olympics, so it just seems like there, and I think Ken, you said that it was too busy, and I kind of felt that same way. Because if there's a preference, it would be number 2, and kind of like Leslie was talking about with the blues and the gold. I think that's a great look. And Donna had mentioned that it also kind of brings it to a New York State thing with the blue and gold. So that's what I like. But number 4, interestingly, that is my favorite right on. And then I shared it with someone to get an opinion on that. They said, what's with the tail? So I can't see that arrow as a tail to our logo. So I kind of went back to just more basic, traditional number 2 with blues and golds. That's what I think.
Well, that's clear as mud for you guys.
Well, I think
I
think there is some consensus.
Yes, a lot, yep.
I think we've got obviously 4 doesn't make it, but we've got strong feelings about 2 or 1A as we call it. I think 2 or 3 of you, 2 at least, 3 of you may have called that one out as a preference, and then 1. I think 5 generally received, I don't think it had, Rob, I think you were the one that endorsed that one, and I think you might be alone on that one, right? Yeah, the chief.
Unwavered.
So I think we're down by majority. We're down to that 1 or 1A.
And let's look at the differences between them.
Is there, if I turn out the lights, will that be helpful?
It
might
might
be.
be for some reason on this.
I can't tell that.
I know.
I
It's
can
like,
look at the gold.
it's hard to tell.
It's going over here.
Oh, way
there we go.
better. All right, so the differences between what, 1 and 1A? 1A meaning 2?
Yes, 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So, to me, it's really just the fact that these colors are varied. You know what I mean? I certainly think, and again, I'm just interjecting my opinion here, but I think that if we can not include the icon in we're going to call this the logo, that there's plenty of other ways to use the icons later that are much more appropriate. I think if we include the logo or the icons in this like that, we're presenting a lot with maybe not a lot of value that we're adding, if that makes sense. Like we all know what that is, like the 3 people, it's sort of generic, right? So to me, we're looking at this as the lockup right here, which uses like the, this brass, bronze, navy blue, whatever. And it uses this serif typeface and the sans serif typeface. And then these options are really, to me, they're very consistent, but what we're doing is we're variating the colors, right? And we're just, and in reality, what we're doing here is we're just showing these colors, how they could be used. To me, this is the same logo, but we're exploring different things about how we can take this brand further by utilizing these colors or these icons. To me, again, this logo right here is the logo to a certain degree, right? It's very consistent with what's here. Like this, I like a lot better. I like the blue and this gold, or again, whatever color we're going to call it later. But to me, this is the logo, and then these are the ways that we're creating the variations. So this is the logo here, and then this is the logo on a horizontal. I think it might be cool actually for us to explore some stacked versions too, like if it was OCED, because we're going to need some variations that you can use on like a square or something like that. And I think all of that would look very consistent. This to me sets up like a really good brand foundation to have a lot of freedom with all of the other creativity and assets through the rest of it, right? It's this typeface, it's this simple element. So it's not like a piece of design work that is going to make everything else look the same. It's not going to impact the rest of the branding campaign to a certain degree, because it's not like some graffiti looking font where then you match up a photo of like a business person and those two things don't really line up. So to this, I feel like it projects that strength you were looking for. It's versatile. It would be super easy to do in 1 or 2 colors for reproduction purposes. And then if you like what you've started to see through the rest of these design pieces, like these elements here, right? Like we can figure out like number 4 is a pretty good representation of how we're starting to use these colors, or even number 5, right? Because we're using this navy and this gold. But if we start to feel good about these other brand assets, like this is what the photo style looks like. I like the way you guys are laying things out in terms of prioritization, imagery size, the way you're using these icons right on the bottom above the fold as the page loads. You know, and even this right here, I mean, this is very consistent. We're starting to become very far ahead in the branding of the marketing collateral, where once if we receive that decision, we're able to utilize this and really push some stuff out.
Do you want to put it back to
No,
the
I was like, I was
1A? Why don't we leave it at 1A and really blow it up? Okay.
So, like that.
And just can you postpone it and then scroll down to the next one.
Like this.
There it is. There.
I kind of would be interested in other thoughts around this New York State thing, because I like that, and I think I'm glad I keep pointing to it personally. And I think like, oh, well, the people that we want to like brand ourselves to, our audience we're reaching out to are primarily New York State, so this could be good. Or do others think that like, oh, actually, like maybe having those colored lines and not showing a coherence to New York State is a better thing for us, because maybe it speaks better to our local community and differentiates us.
Now, which New York State logo are you thinking of? Because
I'm thinking of colors.
Oh,
Colors, yeah.
Yeah, or the ODS logo, right? Like ODS or some of these other healthcare or like these state services, even the road signs that they came out with,
Yes,
some of those things.
right.
To me, yes, it pays that, like, I think that their blue is a bit more of like a brighter navy blue with a more yellow.
right,
You know
like
what I
the
mean?
Canal
Some of that
Corp
stuff,
is
right.
definitely blue and yellow.
Exactly. Yeah, Taste NY uses something like this. So if I was to work with your comment, I would say that this pays homage and is similar and respectful and connected to New York State, but is not going to get misinterpreted, you could say, by using those exact colors. I think if we use those exact colors, that would have a negative effect on it, only because then it looks exactly like some of that stuff.
I like the deeper blue, you know, the dark navy versus, you know, the logo, the colors on New York's website here, where the yellow is actually much, it's not a gold. We've got gold.
Bronze, right? Bronze.
I like that the colors that on this, and even with, if we change the colors in the arch of the E, they're bold, they're strong, they say strength. I like that they're not Fairport red, you know, which would be so easy for the trap for us to fall into. Or even, you know, a burgundy, you know what I mean? You know, that we've seen so many times. So I like that about it. Whether we keep E always bronze or we bounce the colors between the 3 different entities. Either way, it's fine with me. I think that style, that look, regardless of the color of the arch, to me, works.
And as the umbrella, we can start gold, right, or bronze, and then as we move through the others, can change them.
Yeah.
So we could have bronze and color.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
And I like the richness of the other colors you've chosen, you know.
Cool.
Because, yeah, I think to that point, For example, this blue, secondary blue here,
Yeah.
could really be the bronze, like when it's just all of OSED.
Yep.
And then really alternate for the others. I'm gonna do
There we go.
yes.
Right.
Having trouble here.
So where are we?
Sounds like we're rallying to two or some variation thereof, right?
Two with the bronze
Yeah.
and the opportunity to
Yep.
use color where
Yes.
appropriate.
Yes, I think one of the options is replacing that lighter blue on just on this one with the bronze wing
Sure.
colors to see how it looks, which is a very easy thing to show.
Right.
And I think if that was the selection, right, what would happen is we would package up and create brand guidelines for this logo. And then we can start to create the marketing collateral and do, here's a version of the standing banner, whatever it may be, in these core colors. Here's two of them, you know what I mean, in different colors. And then you might say, oh, I like the way that it looks differently in these different instances, or I like where everything's consistent the same.
Okay.
But to me, it sounds like you picked option one.
I
To-
would
to
support
serve.
option one
Okay.
But with bronze though.
with bronze, though that makes the IDA off the one in the upper right awfully close to it.
Right, colors
That's
TBD.
Right, yeah, colors flex.
And I think to your point, Jesse, that's a very easy edit to change, just the IDA to say it was green, where when we're creating, say, a banner proof or business card proof, we can kind of elaborate and show that because it's really the same logo with a small color change. And it might help to get a better idea the more pieces you see that can be side by side, like here's a brochure, here's a banner.
And I
Those
think,
things.
figure out how to do this on here. I think that this logo type works well. For example, this is called like on a dark background or knockout, right? So it's extremely legible like this. And if all you would do in these cases is make that arc white, unless there's a few ways that this will happen, right? You're going to choose to print some things in-house and use a one color version, which this would be the blue, the black, or it would be white knocked out. And we'll give you all the guidelines on how to use this. I think that it's readable. It's like easy to see. So even if you had job site signage, if you were sponsoring this EDC event that's later this week, and they said you can put your logo on all these mugs, but the mugs are blue or they're solid color, you're able to print this on and have the flexibility throughout the design. Versus option 5 with all those different things, that's awesome. It looks cool and there's a lot of meaning behind it, but to keep that consistent means you're going to have to pay for each color to get added to the production, and just going to increase your costs later. Swapping the color won't be a big deal, but the more colors inside of the logo, the more expensive it will be to reproduce that, in true.
Is the goal to say, are we ready to make a decision on 1 versus 2 or 1A? Is it blue?
I'm gonna go light.
Robin, comfortable with deciding now?
Sure.
Kevin? Donna?
Yeah, I'm good. And honestly, so any of those, I think go with that.
Well, we're debating on, in the packet, we're debating on the first one versus the second one, regardless of whether we call it 1 and 1A or 1 and 2. They're the exact same, the two successive ones. I personally I'm comfortable with 1, with allowing us the opportunity to use 4 different colors in the E, 1 for the umbrella organization and separate colors for each of the entities underneath. Kevin?
Fine with me. Sure.
Good.
Okay,
All right.
bravo.
Good.
to us.
All right.
Yay.
Cool. Yes.
All right, good job.
Cool.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So yes, next steps, we'll package those up. We'll show the gold as well as, the 3 colors, how that's a variation of it, and get into marketing assets.
Yes,
Sweet.
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
I really,
You
really
all as well.
appreciate you coming out because I really
Absolutely.
think that facilitated the discussion in a way we couldn't not.
Sure. Yes. And thank you for your involvement also, versus like saving it for later when we leave. It's much easier to just have this open conversation now. You know what I mean? I work through this discussion versus we're naming an organization now and like it's all dead silence on the meetings. But then like as soon as we're done, you see all the comments flying around. You know what I mean, on the shared document. I'm like, you can say that to us. Like, this is our job. We got it. But thank you for your participation and the input.
Good.
Awesome.
Good, 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 good. All right.
Cool.
Thank you very
Welcome.
much,
You all as
gentlemen.
well.
Thank you. And we
And thank
have
you
a
for
call,
your computer use.
Thursday.
Yes, we pushed Thursday. Yep.
Yes. Okay,
It's a technical issue.
good.
which was kind of
So
crazy.
you all
Awesome.
disconnect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Moving.
Yes.
Perfect.
And we're on time, right?
And
We
you're
Yeah.
want,
Yeah.
we want to assure the chair that we're on time for our deliverables.
There we go.
So,
Nice meal.
Good.
Thank
Good.
you very
Thank
much. Thank you.
Yes, thank
All
you.
right.
Awesome. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Safe
We got
Thank
you
you
on the
all.
next one, I promise. Right? We're gonna do all the photos.
Thank you. Thank you.
All
right, yep.
Turn off the monitors.
Bill, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. All right.
Ready to move along?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
All right, then, is there any other old business?
No, sir, I don't have any other old business.
We'll move on to financial reports. Our first matter is resolution 2023-02, authorizing payment of the IDA bills. I've reviewed the bills and I would move that they be paid.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Martha, anything to point out?
No, you can see a couple of payments on our senior grants. We have a woman that, over on Woodlawn, and we're working through addressing some of her safety issues, primarily with the porches and so forth. So she's got a little bit of money left where she's looking at upgrading some electrical and providing security lighting and so forth. So we'll finish that out with her probably in the spring.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Our next matter is the financial statements themselves, the P&L, the balance sheet. Any comments, any questions? Look pretty normal to me.
It does. I think we were very, very, very conservative in our interest income projection.
Yeah.
And so there's quite a bit of money there. We also, you can see the impact of those pilot payments. If you remember, we recast the lease for Canal East, the Packett's Landing. And so now they pay us, rather than every other month, they pay the bills when they're due, the January, the village bill on, or September for the school taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see the impact there.
Cash and investments is the next report.
I did work with Megan Burke from the Tompkins with regard to that maturing treasury. And we split that up, and we've got about 100 of it maturing September of 24. And then the balance of it is maturing in summer of 26, I believe. And there's one more that matures in April. And that's the last New York State holding we have. That's, it's a school district holding, I think, that was identified. And then we'll be clear of that. Everything else will be just the treasuries.
And let's see, the next thing is at all of them.
So we looked at the cash balances.
Yep.
You've got the investment statement there.
Yep.
Mhm.
Any questions, concerns from board members? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to the next matter, which I believe is the UTEP, right?
That's correct. Mhm.
The United Tax Exemption Policy or the Uniform
Mhm.
Tax Exemption Policy. We've looked at this now three times and
Mhm.
received the latest draft maybe a week ago.
Right. Mhm. And we did hold a public hearing in December on the matter. As a course of action, you always have to notify the affected taxing jurisdictions whenever you're going to amend the uniform tax exemption policy. They were notified and we received no comment with regard to our drafts.
And everybody is responsible for billing their own according to the
Yes.
schedule.
The affected taxing jurisdictions bill and collect the pilot payments. Mhm.
I just had one question on the policy, which was under the applicability, number 1, the second paragraph there. And it says this should be retroactive prior to January 1st, 1994. Should that date not be like something in 2023?
No, because Brandon, I think maybe in 1994 there was some IDA legislation with regard to pilot bills, I believe. That January 94 bill is a reference, I believe, to legislation about pilots. And because we had existing pilots back from the 80s,
Yeah.
that law was only for things going forward. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, that sounds right. I was interested, of course, in the copies of any of the legislation.
No, we mentioned that date 3 times in that section, and I thought one of the sections referred to what you're talking about, but I thought, like, if we don't say anything about now, we're also saying that the ones from 1994 to now can be amended.
Okay, so let's see.
It is not retroactive with respect to pilot payments or tax exemptions for projects which received financial assistance prior to 94.
Oh, see, there it is. It's in accordance with the chapter of the laws of 1993, the IDA Reform Act. That's what I was referencing. Sorry.
So we're okay. So we can amend pilots from 1994 to now based on. That's what that last sentence says.
Yes, we take under opportunity and modify or sign, otherwise alter agreements written or unwritten with respect to tax exemptions prior to.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, prior to 1994.
But I get what Don is saying here, but what about, if, we did in 2015, for example, is there an exclusion in there that these things are now subject to this? They cannot be treated retroactively as well?
Mm-hmm. I see your point. If for example, we have a pilot in place with, let's say, GLR family with regard to their project, and that was a 2021 pilot. And if for some reason we wanted to amend it, right, Brendan, and it's, we have that, do we have that right regardless of our pilots going forward to amend them at any time? Certainly we would. I think it's to protect the pilots that exist prior to 94. So I can understand why there's confusion. Does this, the way it's written, preclude us from amending any pilot that we want? We have the right to continue, amend, modify, assign, or otherwise alter agreements, don't we, regardless of the date?
Yeah, I do see just looking at the second here, I do see where the question is coming from.
I wonder if it's in our existing one.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, is there someplace in there, just we can say simply something, you know, or this is for projects after June 1st, 2023, this is the policy, you know, that is in effect for that. Because, you know, we can go back and amend somebody, but if it's not in their favor, but if they draw from something that we did a custom pilot for them, so well, you don't qualify in that under our policy, so we're gonna change you back to our standard policy. I don't think that would go over. And I don't think we would be doing that, but is there some language that is only for projects going forward? First or whatever that is. So if it's
So-
not necessary, then.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that the general municipal law, which is the law that's referenced there, you know, going through the document, must have spoken about amendments and how they could be applied going forward from January 94.
Yeah,
And since we had them on, we already had some,
you know, they have everything has an effective date. I don't think there was one in this. Could we just add an effective date for this policy change? It's the way legislation is.
I'm not sure.
so Brendan, how about this? What if we, in that second paragraph of applicability,
Mhm.
we just state the law is not retroactive with respect to pilot payments or tax exemptions for projects which receive financial assistance prior to January 1, 1994, period. And then if we struck the next language, what impact would that have on us? I mean, we have those rights already.
Right.
Do we need to say that we have them? Because we've already, everybody, because the law is not applicable. It's almost stating the obvious, but then creating this problem with a date. Because the general municipal law is not retroactive for anything that came before it.
Right.
So could we strike that language, the therefore?
Yeah, I can't see any obvious issues with doing that.
Right.
Yeah,
Let's think for a minute though. Okay, so because that therefore states what's obvious by law anyhow, or not. I'll defer to you. Because as you recall, we have pilots in place from the 80s that are critical to our function here. And we don't want to disturb them.
Right.
Right.
And do we want to disturb ones that were done after 1994? Or do pilots that are placed quite recently, do they have the right to come back and ask us to amend based
Oh,
on
sure.
their pilot and work?
Sure.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Oh, yes.
okay.
Yes. This is a function of that general municipal law from 94, and I don't off the top of my head I don't recall why it was necessary to say that.
Okay.
But clearly delineating that right.
Yeah, I'll defer to you.
Well, there's generally a reason why we would. Not suggesting that you're incorrect, my friend, but I think that's a right that's not speaking to the beneficiaries, like the organizations that have it. That's speaking, that's us retaining our own right to do that.
Okay.
There's generally a reason why we would want that there, because it's protecting our rights to do so.
Okay.
I just don't know enough about this specific scenario where how much harm are we doing to ourselves realistically by removing that? I mean, Ed is closer to this. Perhaps we can get in touch with Ed, upon his return.
Yeah.
And does
I
that
don't
mean
know.
we can't approve it tonight? Is that where we're going?
The only thing I'm concerned about is, I mean, I think that the language regarding 1994 is in there. Probably doesn't need to be modified. But I'm saying, okay, this week they gave that to somebody in 2018. And they take a look at our policy and they say, well, wait a second, look at all the boxes I checked, gave you a standard. I want you to give me now the extended version. And so that's where I'm saying that's what we don't want to get into, with somebody being able to come back and say, where we would say in this case that part is not retroactive, the new policy is not retroactive to things that happened prior to June 1st, 2023. So I think, for my concern, the easiest thing to say that this policy is effective on such and such.
Brendan, was this section 874, was that the requirement that we establish a uniform tax exemption policy? Was that the first time? Because if you notice on our policy page, January of 94 is when we first adopted, right, a uniform tax exemption policy.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I'm reading it. I will kick the tires a little bit and double check that that is what that is. But that is how I'm reading the document. This area.
Yeah. So. Well, I think that the matter is important, and I don't want to start hacking at the UTEP. So maybe we aren't able to adopt this month. So I think, to Kevin's point, that it's in there for a reason.
Yeah.
And we need to understand why before we take it out. But I believe back in 1994, IDAs were operating without uniform tax exemption policies, kind of in a free-for-all. And the state said, you have to have this so that you're not giving to some and not to others and so forth. So, and because of our unique situation, having existed since 76, we had all that history prior to that without a uniform tax exemption policy. So.
And there's nobody at our door right now where we would have to implement this, right?
No, there is not.
So
there are no
I don't see
pending.
a harm in waiting that.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we can. Why don't we have a general discussion, a very short one, actually, maybe about any other issues about what's presented to you. Only, and because we do have the village board is coming in at 6:30, so we want to be mindful of that. We've got 2 more meetings to get through.
If we make these changes, if changes are required, do we have to have a second public hearing?
No.
After that? Okay.
No. Because we did hold a public hearing, and that matter would not affect, and I'm not an attorney, but that matter, whether or not we strike that date, would not impact the pilot collections.
We have any other comments, observations about the policy as it's drafted? sent to us? Or is this the only issue?
I've got a question around it. Martha and I talked this afternoon about this a little bit. The policy itself, the policy makes sense to me. I think the varying levels of exemptions that we present are smart to me. When we started this conversation to look at the UTEP and to revisit it and potentially make changes, one of the main focal points was to do so that we can really drive investment in the village around our strategic plan initiatives. And I think there's language in here that speaks to how we will evaluate towards attainable housing, historic preservation, mixed-use development, and creation of specific types of employment. So I like all of that. My only issue is I feel like I want to try to make it so that it's clear to a developer what our target, what's an easy target for you to hit when you're thinking about a development project here. And Martha walked me through the Excel file that helps, kind of breaking down the scoring. And that was helpful. But if we're focusing the conversation today on the policy, I have no major issues with what's here. What I think is still to be discussed, and the conversation a month ago was a really good, a good exchange with our chair and myself, discussing some of the scoring criteria and what it should look like, what it might look like. I'm not 100% comfortable on where we're at on that front right now. But if that's a separate conversation, then that's a separate conversation that I still very much want to have. Martha, you clarified for me today the idea that this policy would be presented to a developer with a cover sheet. Right?
Sure. The collateral piece that goes with it, that would look, be more specific in describing the strategic vision. Sure.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't clear to me initially in looking at this policy if that was something that was missing from this or if it was something that would be bolted on top of it.
Right.
You've clarified that it's something that would be bolted on top of it.
Right.
So I think discussing how we're presenting that separate component of this is something I'd want to flesh out further as well.
Right, right.
But if the question is solely what we've got here, knowing that those pieces are still to be discussed and nailed down, I look forward to those future conversations, and I'm comfortable with what's here.
We were talking about that this is policy. This lives on your website and is your reference point, but it's not your marketing collateral material or companion piece. And also, by having the policy drafted this way, it references the strategic vision, but as that vision moves and changes and morphs, it doesn't require this piece to be modified. It can still be appropriate, and then it's how it's evaluated and put into play that can change.
I mean, the way I would read this is that if I was a developer looking to say, all right, I want to go and I want to build in Fairport, that's where I want to be. How can I do it cost effectively down the road? I would read this and say, oh, what is in their strategic vision? I still want to do X, but if I can do these things around it, that'll make X more profitable.
Right.
Then I will.
Right. And to Rob's point at paragraph 2 at the bottom of the page, we tell them what criteria they're going to be evaluated on.
Yes. And the chances of it, in general, if the developer hit 2 of those, I think we'd be lucky. 3, crazy.
Right. We're not going to be inundated with these projects because we're so built out, but I think it communicates what we're looking for with that companion piece, for example.
And the scoring stuff, the scoring components and that evaluation process, that Excel file is a great tool, right? And that will help with consistency and kind of plugging different components of each project in, perfect. But just want to work through some details
Mm-hmm.
on that too. But again, if that's a separate conversation, I won't go into that. If this is all, if it's an inclusive conversation around that too.
Yeah.
I'll have more to say.
Well, we can, right, so we're tabling this for now, pending further discussion of that applicability paragraph, right? Is there any other, for our council to review for us, any other items within this that we want him to take a look at?
I guess maybe perhaps that effective date, the point Kevin's making, it's silent towards an effective date. Right?
Okay,
It refers to that 1994 date, but doesn't speak to as of. And
okay,
if someone came to us and asked that question of, you did, we did this pilot in 2018, can we revisit that? We've spoken to how we retain the right to do so, but we haven't sort of codified whether you can ask that question or not. And maybe it makes sense strategically to not, or maybe it would be wise to put in that specific date when these could be
okay,
factors that are criteria that will be used to evaluate.
okay, good. Well, I think Brandon will take this back and work with Ed. And I think,
Do you want
If
a
you-
motion to table?
yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of tabling, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously.
Thank
All
you.
right, we're on to proposed committee meetings, I believe,
Right,
for the rest of 2023. You have that in the packet. The Governor's Committee, our planning session would be scheduled for April. And the Audit and LDC Finance Committees would meet 3 times during this year from now forward.
what board member Donna Stefano requested that we maybe take a look at moving that July 6th meeting. I was just looking at it globally from a calendar perspective, but it does that's a very big holiday week. So at that meeting, typically what I do is present the draft budget, and then you send me away with changes, and then I bring them to the board for approval. So if we moved it, perhaps, and I'd prefer to move it later rather than earlier, because that gives me time to have more under my belt fiscal year wise. So we'd be looking at the week of July 10th and maybe the 12th of July instead of July 6th.
Is it a Wednesday then?
Yes. Does that work out okay?
It's fine with me.
So change the July 6th to July 12th.
Are the other dates okay with board members?
Especially that planning date, because that's
Yeah.
a very big night
Yeah, it's
for us.
important we all be there. Wednesday,
Wednesday, April 12th,
Why am I not finding it on?
page 39 of your board package.
Thank you. Where's that on the agenda? There.
yeah,
Is that meeting in the morning or the?
That's usually a dinner meeting,
afternoon?
planning,
that's right.
yes.
That's April 12th?
Proposed is April 12th.
Reps.
Mhm.
Yeah, 12th is good.
Okay. Everybody else good with the 12th? Leslie?
Yeah, I could do that. What time are we talking about? 5 to 7, 5 to 8. Okay.
Want a motion to approve these dates?
With the one change to the, yes,
July 6th to July 12th.
yes.
Is there a motion to approve the committee meeting schedule?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimous.
Is the July 12th meeting evening or?
No, that's typically during the day, the morning. The other committee meetings are during the mornings typically.
Just making sure.
I think the last matter of new business relates to use of our North Main parking lot by the Merchants Association relating to Canal Days.
Correct. Now, I typically do not bring these forward, but because we're all aware of the parking issues on the North Main side of the village, I wanted to point out that they will be using this as the kid zone. Now, they're going to be using it from 6 a.m. Saturday until 7 p.m. Sunday, but as you recall, the street opens on Friday night and Saturday night. During that time, our lot will still be available, except that they'll have their stuff in the north side there next to Tony Pitnero's building. My point being, we'll lose a few parking spaces during those evening hours. I think that's reasonable. It's worked in the past. It happened last year. No change from last year. It's just because of the parking issues, I want to make us aware that we may lose like 20 parking spaces. I have no objection to it. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Again, we've done this for quite a period of time, I believe.
Just not in that specific location, or has it always been there?
Yes, they used it for vendors one year, but the kid zones are back, I guess. So, right, because the kid zone was high contact, high touch for a while. So, so it's back. So, just making you aware.
They had somebody closer, more closely involved must have looked at, the unpaved portion of that, and if there's any way to use that for this overnight storage, so that we're not chewing up spaces.
I think that what is I think they're occupying the whole lot and trying to push it to one side
Consolidating it
for the
for the evening.
evening to allow car traffic. So asking to move them down and back might logistically be an issue.
I mean, I'm assuming someone has looked at that and said, there is not a better way. But I mean,
Yeah,
For 1 or 2 nights, I think we can leave enough parking spaces.
people are,
The
and
other option is with Alberti's lot, loan space overnight, 2 nights, Friday and Saturday night,
you mean for the parking or for
for their stuff.
I don't know if you want me to inquire about,
No, I think
Relocate.
we could request that.
no, if you would like me to inquire of Canal Days, can they remove what would it involve to remove their stuff either farther down or to another location? I can go back to them with that.
I'm always amazed that they leave things get left out overnight on Canal Days weekends and nothing in general happens to it. I mean,
all over the village.
pleasantly,
Right.
It is just a few spots, but also it's one of those nights of the year where those few spots
It's also
would
one
be
of the nights of
utilized.
the year that people walk all over our village.
That's true.
We're walking from one end of the village to the
Right.
other and back again,
Yeah.
That's probably one of the biggest walking weekends we've got.
Sure.
I don't know.
So would you want me to ask them to come back to us with a,
I'd say,
I think we can approve it, just,
Yeah.
if they can do something to minimize the space, and they're gonna take out, that's what we should do. this as is, just ask them to minimize it.
Makes sense.
I'll make that motion.
There's a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Any other items of new business? Then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So, second?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on the motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. For the IDA, we are adjourned.
You